This year, I studied from home.
This year, I studied from this desk.
I studied from Dallas, Texas.
I studied from Lima.
From Changwon, South Korea.
New Orleans.
From Melbourne, Australia.
I studied from Manila, Philippines.
I studied from Palestine.
I studied dentistry.
I studied anthropology and neuroscience.
Public policy.
I studied social studies.
I made a tremendous amount of pasta.
I cut my hair.
I discovered how to animate.
Doesn't it look good?
I spent a lot of time playing guitar.
I successfully kept these plants alive.
I spent a lot of time with Maggie.
This year, I learned how to watercolor.
I developed new friendships.
I played the cello.
This year I read so many books.
I took a lot of walks around the Charles River.
I discovered the joys and challenges of being a father.
This year I finally conquered the MCAT.
I completed my thesis.
I worked on federal COVID response.
This year I had an internship at Apple.
I finally commissioned as an officer in the United States Army.
I worked on the Biden campaign.
This year I captained a team through a season like no other.
I marched for social justice and racial equality.
I completed a senior thesis.
I was one of the global winners of the NASA Space Up Challenge. My fiancé was too.
I interned at the World Bank.
I got into graduate school.
I completed my master's degree.
This year, I graduate from Harvard.
This year I graduate from Harvard.
This year I graduate from Harvard.
I graduate from Harvard!
This year, I graduate from Harvard, and so does the family.
As the High Sheriff of Middlesex County, I declare that the meeting will be in order.
Greetings from Massachusetts Hall. This is where I used to come to work. I actually haven't done that for 440 days now and counting, but who's counting? This building, the oldest on campus, has been part of the yard since 1720. If it could talk, it would tell tales of George Washington and the troops he quartered here during the Revolutionary War. Tales of John Adams hurrying in and out as a young man, carefully scribbling the day's weather in his diary. Tales of the handful of you who called its fourth floor home as first-year students. This building is a testament to the strength and resilience of Harvard and its people. Brick by beautiful brick, it was built by individuals who did not yet dream of a United States of America. People who could not yet dream of the university into which you entered as students from across the country and across the world, with circumstances and experiences as varied as your extraordinary achievements. Welcome, members of the Harvard class of 2021, and congratulations. You're on the brink of joining one of the world's most accomplished communities of alumni, a community that for nearly 400 years has connected the age that is past to the age that is waiting before. That line from our alma mater puts the vexing present into a more welcome context. This too shall pass. A global pandemic has kept us apart this year, but we've learned together, we've grown together, and we have overcome together. I've never seen such grit, such determination, and I have never, ever been prouder of this institution. So while this is not the moment you imagined when you began your course of study, take a moment to appreciate all that this age has actually given you. No commencement tickets. Everyone could come. No parking drama. And, let's face it, 0% chance of rain. Front row seats for everyone you love and everyone who loves you. And well-deserved hoots and hugs and hollers and high fives as your degree is actually conferred. One day you will celebrate your graduation on campus with classmates and friends in familiar places, and that day cannot come soon enough. For now, however, delight in the company of those who've cheered you on and cheered you up, those who've urged determination in the face of disenchantment, those who've supplanted languish with levity, with hope with joy, those who have sacrificed so much so you can be here. One of a number of things that is unusual about this celebration is that many of you are actually sitting right now next to your families and loved ones, people who have in some cases become your unexpected sweetmates over the course of this past year. No one accomplishes anything in life on his or her own. Your loved ones have nurtured and supported you on this journey that has led you to this day. I want you to actually take a minute now and thank them for all that they've done to get you to this moment. Go ahead, give them a hug of thanks. They deserve it. And now we'll pause while you do that. I hope you will delight too in the colossal feat of your arrival. Consider the days, the months, the years of relentless effort, in some cases of stunning failure, but also thrilling triumph. Consider what you sacrificed and what you gained. Consider who you were when you got here and who you are now as you leave. When it was that you most grew in knowledge and in wisdom, and where you will go from here. This moment is meant for you and will be yours forever. Fair Harvard welcomes you at last into her storied company, and I send you into a new age on the wings of wishes born from familiar lyrics. May you think freely and bear patiently those who think differently. May you quicken the currents of truth in every field and discipline and hasten the world to better days. May your destinies, like our beloved universities, be onward and bright. Congratulations, members of the Harvard class of 2021, and Godspeed. Now, we will hear from 3 students selected to deliver this year's orations. Jordan Bliss Perry of Kirkland House, a joint concentrator in computer science and classics, will deliver the undergraduate Latin address. Silvana Gomez of Mather House, a psychology concentrator with a secondary in studies of women, gender, and sexuality, will deliver the undergraduate English address. And finally, Vincent H. Bish, Jr., a candidate for the degree of Master of Education, will deliver the graduate English address.
Praeses Bacoe, decani honesti, professores sapientissimi, familiares, amici et hospites, condiscipuli carissimi denique, ubicumque in mundo estis, salvete omnes. Maximus mihi est honor, apud vos hancarationem habere, et hoc traditum Harvardianum servare, etiam si hoc anno horribili mutanda sunt solemnia nostrum. Non enim rostrum vexilis condecoratum, sed theatrum tercentenarium mortalibus vacuum et pixelatum adspicitis, non quasi in medio mari miliorum amicorum, sed in virtuali comitio cancelato sedetis, non denique sonantia tintinabula ecclesiae memorialis, sed sibila surda computatria auditis. Fortasse illud immutabile constat, quod discipulus literarum classicarum quinque minutas loquitur, manibus circum volantibus, et voce clamante in lingua antiqua et obscurissima. Sed ne lingua latina quidam pandemiae est expers, Romanis enim debemus non solum gratias agere, ob radices modernae et AstraZenecae, sed etiam abeis veniam petere, quod deformavimus fidele verbum coronam. Discipulus et informaticae et literarum classicarum conjugiis scientiae modernae ac linguae antiquae haud imperitus sum. Multi nostrum commentationes baccalaureatas scripsimus, heo sine bibliothecis in quibis noctes alternas attrivisemus procrastinantes ad auroram nitiram. Quo in labore meo reperi grammaticam antiquam et machinas autodocentes laborare ad communem finem posse. Praeterea saepe gavis sum in similibus nuntiis condiscipulorum, quipe qui itam duas singulas disciplinas conjugerant, seo mathematicam cum historia, seo statisticam cum philosophia. Itaque curriculum Harvardianum imprimis nos hortatur, ut interdisciplinas pontes construamus, ut alia martem alia scientia muniamus. Imo ecce educationem generalem. Equis audivit documentum celebratum de Heroe Graeco? Vos certe in memoria tenetis, quomodo Homerus in primo versu Odysseae ulixem laudat Polytropon, versutum, peritum multarum et variarum artium via longa perfecta. Periter nostrum autem in hac universitate nos quoque, ut ait semper decanus curana, transformati sumus praeceptis omnium disciplinarum. Non modo unius scientiae praestantes, sed etiam multarum artium magistri facti sumus. Hoc enim culmen artium ingenuarum est. Pestis autem in qua nunc vivimus demonstrat ultra hoc praeceptum. Tantum enim debemus nostris biologis, heroibus modernis, multa passis dum condrent remedium inferentque vacinam mundo. Nos ipsi autem calidi cultures epidemiologiae facti sumus, ut nuntium de vacinis et mutationibus intellegeremus. Sed non modo scientia, sed etiam artibus humanioribus crevimus. Nam libros, carmina, picturam, musicam aut commodiam resumpsimus. Fabulis nostris in quarantina intermissis, ad personas televisionis et cinemae vertimus, ut gaudia tristiaque humanitatis sentiremus. Si ergo scientia e peste eripimur, per pestem humanioribus sustenemur. Itaque, cum his ex claris portis, et in magna liminae vitae gredimur, ipsi portemus hanc interdisciplinitatem doctem in Harvardiana. Ut amor educatione generali ad causam maiorem, cum spargere in canis nugas de tempestatibus Darwinismo pyramidibus scuris aut Biblia Hebraea. Disciplinas ad hoc secretas contexamus, nit amor arista culmina gubernationis et negoti literarum et scientiae. In mundo nostro quidem semper opus est multarum artium magistris, quam ad finem sua quemque muretur cura, inveriant medici philosophos suos, avocati poetas, et machinarii philologos. Valete omnes!
The morning of my first day of kindergarten, I woke up ready to take on the day. At 5 years old, it was the start of a new life, with new friends, new routines, a new me. After picking out the perfect first day of school outfit, I was out the door with a belly full of arepa con queso and a blue butterfly clip holding my wet hair. My little body exuded confidence on my way to school, each stride more fierce than the last. I felt larger than life. The door to my classroom swung open. I caught a glimpse of dozens of other kids, some still eating breakfast on their freshly laminated placemats and others already claiming their cubbies on the top shelf. After setting my bag on the floor, my mother kissed me goodbye and said, "Este es el comienzo de tu nueva experiencia." This is the beginning of a new experience. My stomach dropped. Before she could take another step towards the door, I was at my mother's feet, legs and arms wrapped like a sloth around her leg, and tears streaming down my face like a water slide. The thought of having to confront this new world on my own was terrifying. For the last few months, we've all been told that we're heading towards a new normal, and it makes sense. After a virus claims the lives of almost 3 million human beings around the world, there is no way to go back to the life that we were living before January of 2020. But COVID-19 is not the only virus that has claimed the lives of people in the last year. We have watched as a failed healthcare system has compromised the lives of those in the unhoused community, the undocumented community, the low-income community, and every other human being who has been denied equal access to health care in a time of crisis. We've been witness to the murders of Black people at the hands of those sworn to protect them. Murders that have been normalized and justified for generations. We've been witness to the murders of Asian Americans as a result of divisive political leadership that have used their platform to spew hateful and dangerous propaganda. White supremacy has added fuel to the fire that had already given us so much to mourn. Racism, xenophobia, classism. As a collective, we have come face to face with the aspect of our society where we are lacking, where we need to learn from one another and be better. This last year has also shown us where our strengths lie. Oftentimes, we'll find that our communities are the source of these strengths. Last March, as the news of an online semester created unimaginable chaos in everyone's life, we low-income students were faced with unique struggles and barriers as we navigated the unknown. The first-generation community stepped up to provide emotional and financial support to its members. Despite our different realities, we were there for one another. A Harvard degree comes with a high level of responsibility. Our communities look to us as leaders and change makers. Once we figuratively leave the Harvard yard that has been home to tears, laughter, and memories that we will never forget, the onus will be on us, the class of 2021, to lead the change towards a new normal. The generations to come will be looking up to us as we put out fires and lay the foundation of a world that they will be proud to be a part of. When I imagined this day, I pictured tens of thousands of people all crammed into Tercentenary Theater, a place that has been home to memories that have adorned and defined our Harvard experience. I pictured myself marching all the way from Mather House into the yard that once welcomed a doe-eyed first year trying to find her way to Wigglesworth Hall, recalling another late night in Lamont and early morning in Widener with every step. Most importantly, I pictured myself presenting my cap and gown to my parents and my brother as a way to thank them for their support, their sacrifices, and their unwavering belief in me. While the reality of what this day looks like is in stark contrast to what we may have dreamt of, let us be thankful for the people and experiences that have brought us here and the memories that we have created. My mother still shares the story of the first day of kindergarten where she had a sloth wrapped around her leg. Each time I reach a new milestone in my life, she'll tie it back to that day as an attempt to put my fears into perspective and to emphasize just how far I have come. No importa lo asustada que te sientas en el momento, superas tus miedos y sigues adelante. No matter how scared you are in the moment, you overcome your fears and you keep pushing. As we embark on this unpredictable journey of life after Harvard in the middle of a worldwide crisis, I encourage you all to keep this quotation with you. It is a large and crucial task that we have on our hands: to dismantle the systems of oppression that have taken too much from our people and too much from our communities. And while we may want to wrap our arms around the familiarity of our dining halls, our houses, and one another, it is our time to go out into the world and build something that we are proud of. A world where we uplift the voices of those who have been silenced for too long and empower those who have been pushed into the shadows. It is our time to create a new normal.
Because it was illegal for them to practice religion, slaves would use a traditional kettle to pray. Prayers for freedom were often whispered into the kettles, which were kept underneath the floorboards of slave cabins to keep them out of sight of their masters. Every time I walk through Wadsworth Gate and see the plaque of those 4 lone enslaved that lived here at Harvard, I'm gobsmacked. I am thunderstruck at what it means to be a scion of that living, of that horror, of that opportunity for each and every one of us to make them proud. I wipe their names clean with my fingers because they're my entry point to this place, and I honor them as forefathers and foremothers and forebearers that helped to, from the sordid debris of our collective history, establish this magical place. But as I see them there on that wall, I'm without words. What do you say to them, right? To these fighters of battles long dead? What do I say to you who prayed for me with whipped flesh as I am left to hold down the fort of this history in your name? I imagine that in these cast iron kettles in the ground, that they answer us back. I imagine that they say to us that we, the living, stand under a unique duty to the deceased. That we say as much every time we pledge allegiance to a flag or honor a veteran's homecoming. We stand under a unique duty to bring their bodies back out from yonder, back out from the torrential rain of history's long night, and finally, under the eaves of justice, their mere existence on this campus should let each and every one of us know that in every profession, at every school, we have a moral ledger to clear and something to make right. From the disregarding of Henrietta Lacks' rights in the field of medicine, to the law failing Fred Korematsu, to the clergy giving Richard Fuller a platform, we the living are lucky if we get a chance to take down those legacies and dismantle them. We are lucky if we happened upon careers and an institution that lends our voices an unrivaled strength to call to account those who would seek to deny and seek to delay justice to the children of the dispossessed. We do well to remember that in 1973, it was doctors from this university that led the charge in declassifying homosexuality as a mental illness. That it was a social scientist from this university that coined the term intersectionality, because we are home to the first school of public health in the history of this nation and this country's oldest urban planning program. So make no mistake, Harvard has always been an intrepid project in the business of doing new things, as well as hard ones. Hold my hand. It'll be difficult, but as James Baldwin says, if we do not falter in our duty now, we may be able, handful that we are, to end the racial nightmare and finally achieve our country. But as he admonishes a few lines later, if we do not now dare everything, then the fulfillment of that prophecy, recreated in a song of a slave, is upon us. My directive to you on this beautiful morning is simple. Place the force of your intellect somewhere where it might disrupt a system and shake more fairness loose. We need you. I need you to forgo this spirit of disempowerment. The work we have to do in this decade is too precious for your timidity. The mountains we have to climb in this, our moment of history, are too steep for soft shoes. The titans we have to shout down in this moment have grown too loud for quiet voices. Now is the time for which you have been made in all your earth-staggering brilliance. Now is the time for which your ancestors, black, white, and neither, laid down their deeds, knowing they could do no more, so that you might do better. The four enslaved, Bilhah, Venus, Titus, and Juba, live lives worthy of their service. Live lives that make right the sin of their bondage. Because if you love this place, my God, if you love this place, you have to. Live lives that carry the name of Harvard like a benevolent torch into the next century, that we may not only be the bearers of great privilege, but the breakers of powerful yokes as well.
Bliss, Silvana, and Vincent, thank you for delivering such moving addresses on behalf of your classmates. Congratulations to all three of you. As provost, it is now my privilege to introduce our performer, Devin Gates, an accomplished singer and bass player. Devin hails from Atlanta, Georgia. She is a social anthropology concentrator and a dual degree candidate for a Bachelor of Arts from Harvard College and a Master in Music from the Berklee College of Music.
has come, and the land is dark, and the moon is the only light we see. No, I won't be afraid. No, I won't be afraid. Just as long as you stand by me. But darling, darling, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. And if the sky that we look upon should tumble and fall, and the mountains should crumble to the sea, I won't cry, no, I won't shed a tear, just as long as you stand by me. But darling, no, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. But darling, darling, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. But darling, darling, stand by me. Oh, darling, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Oh, but darling, darling, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand by me.
Devin, that was just beautiful. Thank you for such a stirring performance. Mr. President, members of the governing boards, I now invite the deans to present the candidates for degrees to be conferred this day by Harvard University.
I present the degree candidates from the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences and welcome you to the ancient and universal company of scholars.
I present the degree candidates from the Harvard Paulson School of Engineering and Applied Sciences, who stand ready to address societal challenges through foundational science with translational impact.
I present the degree candidates from the Harvard Extension School and welcome you to the company of educated individuals.
I present the degree candidates from the Harvard School of Dental Medicine, who are well prepared to pursue a demanding branch of medicine.
I present the degree candidates from Harvard Medical School, who stand ready to engage in an honorable and merciful calling.
I present the degree candidates from Harvard Divinity School and wish you well in helping shape the shared values of the broader society.
I present the degree candidates from Harvard Law School, who are well prepared to shape and apply those wise restraints that make us free.
I present the degree candidates from Harvard Business School, who stand ready to lead people in enterprises that make a difference in the world.
I present the degree candidates from the Harvard Graduate School of Design, who share a dedication to shaping, revealing, illuminating, articulating, and reconceiving the spaces in which we live.
I present the degree candidates from the Harvard Chan School of Public Health, each of them devoted to enhancing the health of people throughout the world.
I present the degree candidates from the Harvard Graduate School of Education, who stand ready to guide and serve the learning needs of contemporary society.
I present the degree candidates from the Harvard Kennedy School of Government, who share a commitment to improving public policy and advancing the common good.
As Dean of the Faculty of Arts and Sciences,
and as Dean of Harvard College, we together present the degree candidates from Harvard College, the remarkable and resilient class of 2021.
and we welcome you joyfully, albeit remotely, to the community of educated individuals.
By virtue of the authority delegated to me, I confer on you, today's graduates from across the schools of Harvard University, the degrees for which your studies have qualified you. May you use your learning to advance the pursuit of truth and understanding, to improve the lives of others, and to rise to the challenges of our troubled world. With hearts full of hope and pride, and with gratitude to the family and friends whose support has made this moment possible, all of us in the worldwide Harvard community wish each of you our warmest congratulations. By virtue of authority delegated to me by the governing boards, I now confer the following honorary degrees. The provost will introduce the candidates.
When she went to the White House to receive the National Medal of Technology and Innovation, the minibus transporting her caught on fire. When she flew to England for an award and an audience with the Queen, she was detained by border agents as a suspected imposter. We had hoped to confer today's honorary degrees in person, but experience suggests it's probably not so bad we've spared her a trip. She is one of the world's most creative chemical engineers, renowned for using insights from evolutionary biology to design new enzymes and other proteins. Her discoveries have led to an array of environmentally friendly applications in energy, agriculture, pharmaceuticals, and beyond. For her pioneering use of biological principles to solve chemical problems, she received the Nobel Prize in Chemistry in 2018. Happily, she made it to Stockholm entirely unscathed. The Linus Pauling Professor of Chemical Engineering, Bioengineering, and Biochemistry at Caltech, and the first woman elected to all 3 national academies of engineering, medicine, and sciences. She recently accepted a call to national service as co-chair of the President's Council of Advisors on Science and Technology. We honor Frances Arnold.
Evolving enzymes with neoteric techniques, enabling applications in farming, fuels, and pharma. An adroit doyen of designer proteins who makes it easier being green. Frances Hamilton Arnold, Doctor of Science.
Brave, principled, exacting, relentless, both swashbuckling and careful, possessed of a strong moral compass and an uncanny instinct for a good story, committed to integrity, whatever it takes. Those are just some of the ways his colleagues have described him. He is among the most accomplished and respected journalists of our day. He has played leading roles at 5 of America's premier newspapers. Early on, at the Los Angeles Times and the New York Times. Later, as executive editor of the Miami Herald. Then, for more than a decade, as editor of the Boston Globe. Most recently, for 8+ years as executive editor of the Washington Post, which reaped a harvest of Pulitzer Prizes and Polk Awards under his outstanding leadership. A year ago, on this occasion, he addressed our graduating class of 2020, powerfully affirming the centrality of a free press to the health of democracy. Earlier this year, in retiring from the Post, he urged his colleagues to press forward with their indispensable mission. To tell the truth, he said, as nearly as the truth can be ascertained. We honor Marty Baron.
A formidable fiduciary of America's Fourth Estate, as a herald of light and a bearer of truth, he has deftly kept us posted on the times around the globe. Martin Baron, Doctor of Laws.
How do we manage the boundaries between work and family? How do workers, whether flight attendants or bill collectors, induce themselves to feel and express the emotions that seem right for their jobs? What happens when we pay others to take on our own personal responsibilities? What lies behind the feelings of alienation and anger among many Americans on the political right? These and other thought-provoking questions shape the work of our next honorand, a path-breaking scholar of the sociology of emotion. She has been honored for her books and her teaching, for enhancing the public understanding of sociology, and for enlarging its horizons to more fully encompass the roles of women. A longtime professor at UC Berkeley, she has coined the term the second shift, pioneered the concept of emotional labor, and ventured from blue California to red Louisiana to see the world through different eyes. We, on both sides, wrongly imagine that empathy with the other brings an end to clear-headed analysis, when in truth, she has said, it's on the other side of the bridge that the most important analysis can begin. We honor Arlie Hochschild.
Crossing chasms in outlook with empathy, her springboard. Probing the interplay of feelings and relations. She has reckoned the wages of emotional labor and sought to discern where the right sees wrongs. Arlie Russell Hochschild, Doctor of Laws.
It started in 2004 with his 12-year-old cousin Nadja. She needed help with math. With degrees from MIT and Harvard, he was busy working as a hedge fund analyst. He started tutoring Nadja remotely. Word spread. Soon, he was tutoring 15 cousins. So he figured he'd scale up a bit and post some videos online. Besides, he recalls with amusement, some of his cousins said they liked him better on YouTube. Before long, thousands of students discovered the videos. In time, his nonprofit academy was born. Thousands of students grew to millions. Tens of videos grew to thousands, many featuring our honorand himself. The subjects expanded to science, history, grammar, economics, and much more. Engaging, personalized, active learning open to students and teachers of all ages worldwide. Not just educational, but fun, and all for free. The Khan Academy has emerged as one of the most admired and popular educational resources of the digital age. With more than 100 million registered users, it has helped a generation of students learn and grow, including some of you graduating today. Recently, our honorand launched Schoolhouse.World, a free online tutoring service. It marks another advance toward his noble ideal, offering a high-quality education to anyone, anywhere. We salute Salman Khan.
An avatar of active learning who kindles curiosity in countless students. A virtual virtuoso whose salmagundi of videos opens pedagogic pathways for people worldwide. Salman Amin Khan, Doctor of Laws.
In college, as president of the National Union of South African Students, she raised her voice against apartheid. She came to the United States, studied education at Harvard and law at Yale, and entered legal practice. She became president of the Boston Bar Association, whose origins predate our nation's founding. She became vice president and general counsel of Harvard, America's most enduring institution of higher education. She became Associate Justice, then Chief Justice of the Supreme Judicial Court of Massachusetts, the Western Hemisphere's oldest appellate court in continuous existence. Among her myriad accomplishments as chief, she wrote the first state Supreme Court decision recognizing a constitutional right to marriage equality. In role after role, bringing fresh perspective and change to durable institutions, she has led with wisdom, savvy, and a fierce dedication to fairness, opportunity, and the rule of law. Inspired by hearing Robert Kennedy's words in Cape Town in 1966, she lives by a simple credo, aiming to send forth ripples of hope every day. Lest we forget, her life of service includes time as a senior fellow of the governing board of an obscure Connecticut university, perhaps best known as birthplace of yet another enduring American institution, the Frisbee. We honor Margaret Marshall.
An ardent advocate against apartheid, an eminent exponent of equality under law, in serving venerable institutions, a venerated leader, in striving for justice, a Chief Marshal Supreme. Margaret Hillary Marshall, Doctor of Laws.
He was raised on a farm in Brazil. He trained as an economist in Sao Paulo and Paris. He traveled to Africa for the World Bank, and along the way, he took up a camera. And he discovered that it gave him 10 times more pleasure than economics. I looked through a lens, he recalls, and wound up starting a new life. He is renowned for black and white photographs of extraordinary expressiveness and stark beauty, portfolios of pictures intended to tell stories and to provoke discussion of urgent societal challenges. His boldly ambitious projects have cast light on the homeless and the landless, on migrants and mine workers, on people stricken by famine, and people besieged by war. They have also displayed the grandeur of the natural world and the delicate balance between people and nature. If you take a picture of a human that does not make him noble, there is no reason to take the picture. That, he has said, is my way of seeing things. His reverence for nature finds further expression in the Instituto Terra, the organization he and his wife founded to spur sustainable development in Brazil. We honor Sebastião Salgado.
With sublime images of poignant power, with profound devotion to human dignity, with concern for the precarity of a fragile planet, he frames spellbinding stories of life on Earth. Sebastião Salgado, Doctor of Arts.
She's been a Hasidic rabbi and a Muslim minister, a teenage student of Haitian descent, and a 50-something MIT physicist, chief of the Los Angeles Police, and former chair of the Black Panther Party. She's been a Korean-American grocer, a Native American fisherman, and a pregnant Panamanian cashier wounded by a stray bullet. It's been said that she inhabits other people's souls. Through intensely revealing interviews, through ingeniously constructed monologue-based theater pieces, and through her indelible performances of infinite variety, she has forged a fresh form of art. Her works include Fires in the Mirror, about the racial tensions and violence in Crown Heights, Brooklyn in 1991. Twilight Los Angeles, 1992, about the riots following the verdict in the beating of Rodney King. Notes from the Field, about the conditions and injustices that disproportionately lead many minority students in poor communities out of classrooms and into prisons. Actor and playwright, author and NYU professor, MacArthur Fellow, Jefferson Lecturer, and recipient of the National Humanities Medal, she is among our most incisive and illuminating portrayers of the human condition, especially on issues of race and justice. We honor the singular Anna Deavere Smith.
Stirring our conscience with artful acumen, a portraitist whose palette evokes many hues and shades. Immersing herself in the lives of others, she holds up a mirror to what fires human nature. Anna Deavere Smith, Doctor of Arts. In the name of this Society of Scholars, I declare that these persons are entitled to the rights and privileges pertaining to their several degrees, and that their names are to be forever borne on its roll of honorary members. And now, an original work composed and directed by Dr. Jeremy Faust of Brigham and Women's Hospital and performed by the remarkably talented and extraordinarily skilled doctors, nurses, students, and personnel of Harvard Medical School and its affiliated hospitals. Thank you, Dr. Faust and colleagues, for that beautiful and moving performance. Now I'm thrilled to welcome our principal speaker, the three-time university president whose leadership of some of the nation's finest institutions of higher education is threaded through with a deep commitment to expanding access and eradicating constraints and enabling success. Ruth Simmons was born in Grapeland, Texas, the great-great-granddaughter of enslaved people and the 12th and last child of sharecroppers. She moved to Houston with her family at age 7 and embarked on an educational journey that would change her life. Going to school every day, she said, was a miracle for me. The miracle led to a scholarship to Dillard University, where she graduated summa cum laude. By 1973, she had earned a PhD in Romance Languages and Literatures from Harvard. She then began a phenomenal career, including academic leadership positions at the University of New Orleans, Cal State Northridge, USC, Spelman, and Princeton, where she rose to become Associate Dean of the Faculty and Vice Provost. In 1995, she was named President of Smith College. 6 years later, she became President of Brown University, a position she held for 11 years before retiring to her native Texas. Fortunately, even Ruth can fail. Despite her best efforts, the chance to do good, this time at Prairie View A&M, overcame the certainty of leisure. At her inauguration in 2018, she said, and I quote her, "I believe in a way that my path to Prairie View was written in the heavens. For how else can I explain the improbable way I came to this task? How can I turn away from doing for other young people what was done for me?" It is to the lasting benefit of our country that a powerful and passionate advocate for education is heard once again, fighting fiercely for fairness, for opportunity, for progress. Today, we honor and welcome back to Harvard a pioneering leader, a maker and worker of miracles, my friend, the incomparable Ruth Simmons.
Good day, and congratulations to the Harvard University class of 2021. Let me say that it is a singular honor to be invited to address you on this important milestone occasion. To all completing their studies today, I offer my best wishes as you undertake the next exciting phase of your lives. That you've succeeded so well during such a time as this is commendable, and it augurs well for the years to come, when the world will greatly rely on your knowledge, your discernment, and your empathy for those less fortunate than you. When first approached about delivering this commencement address, I must say I was taken aback. I didn't immediately feel up to the task. Recalling occasions when I sat in Tercentenary Theater, looking across the expanse of graduates to the steps of Widener Library, I couldn't picture myself confidently delivering remarks from a dais where so many more eminent figures had stood and indeed had made history. Growing up on a constant Jim Crow diet that offered assertions of my inferiority, I'm always that same little black girl trying to believe in and demonstrate her worthiness. Further, I thought about the challenge of what I might impart in such a pivotal national moment when social gains seem more like losses, when clarity gives way so easily to confusion, and when much heralded progress recedes like a trompe-l'oeil that was never really real. I extend greetings from the faculty, administration, and students of our 145-year-old institution, Prairie View A&M University. And though I have not been anointed to do so, I also bring greetings from the collection of historically Black and minority serving institutions that have the weight and privilege of advancing success, equity, and opportunity for so many communities across our world. Our university, like many HBCUs, was founded at the end of Reconstruction, when Blacks were thought to be unable to perform the highest level of academic study. I speak to you, in fact, from the Prairie View campus, whose 1,500 acres were once the site of the Alta Vista Plantation. That plantation, before being sold to the state of Texas, was the site where 400 human beings were held in slavery. Thus, our very steps, as they daily tread upon vestiges of the suffering of our ancestors, call to us constantly to do our full duty as citizens. Painful as such memories are, they are a powerful force that calls us to action when challenges arise. During the 145 years following our 1876 founding, it would take many years for most universities in our nation to grant access to Blacks. So, universities like Prairie View, designed with limited resources, serve the state and nation by admitting students to whom full access to the fruits of liberty was intentionally blocked. We're therefore proud of our legacy of endurance, and even prouder of the fact that we converted an assertion of the inferiority of African Americans into a triumph of human capacity. Like other HBCUs, we made a place to empower rather than to disparage, to open minds rather than imprison them, to create pathways to promise rather than to stifle opportunity. But really, such is the task of every true university. Those of you graduating today can well attest to that. When you first arrived at Harvard as undergraduate or postgraduate students, you most likely could not have imagined the many ways that your ability would be tested, your insights sharpened and expanded, and your prospects in life improved by studying at the university. I certainly didn't expect such results when I arrived at Harvard, and yet I know now that it is likely primarily because I studied at Harvard that I've had the deeply rich and satisfying career that I've enjoyed for so very many years. A product of a segregated upbringing in Houston and undergraduate study at an HBCU, I'm ashamed to say that in my youth, I secretly bought into the prevailing racial assumptions of the day. That someone like me would be ill prepared to benefit and contribute to study at a university of Harvard stature. I expected to be flat-footed, if not oafish, in the company of well-heeled and urbane students who had the advantage of the best education and experiences. While not outwardly immobilized by fear of failing the biggest test of my life, I was inwardly terrified that I would fail to measure up. Uncertainty and malaise governed my early days at the university. Harvard was, you see, a place steeped in other people's traditions that I could not easily access. My reaction was very much akin to the French expression denoting window shopping, lécher les vitrines. Those of us who are outsiders are often as mere observers looking through windows, salivating and wondering how we might ever be able to attain a sense of inclusion, acceptance, and respect. Just as when, as a child, I was banned from white establishments, I identified as the outsider looking enviously at others at Harvard who not only had full access to the university's history and traditions, but who also could so easily see themselves reflected in them. Few things that I could see at Harvard at the time represented me. Perhaps it is the memory of that feeling that moved me to remain in university life, to make that experience easier for others who felt excluded. The need to make universities more aware of how first-generation and underserved communities reacted to the stultified tradition in many universities shaped my conviction about the importance of individuals feeling fully embraced and respected as learners, erasing vestiges of disparagement that inevitably accrue in an unequal society. Having been profiled and racially isolated, and having carried within me for so many years the weight of that sentence, I understood that to change our country, we had to insist that everyone's humanity, everyone's traditions and history, everyone's identity contributes to our learning about the world that we must live in together. I came to believe what Harvard expressed in its admission philosophy, that such human differences, intentionally engaged in the educational context, are as much a resource to our intellectual growth as the magnificent tomes that we build libraries to protect, and the state-of-the-art equipment so proudly arrayed in our laboratories. The encounter with difference rocks. I believe that each of us has a solemn duty to learn about and embrace that difference. That undertaking takes not a month, not a year, but a lifetime of concerted action to ensure that we are equipped to play a role in caring for and improving the world we inhabit together. This responsibility should encourage us to commit to our individual as well as professional role in advancing access, equality, and mutual respect. Thus, I believe that the task of a great university is not merely to test the mettle and stamina of brilliant minds, but to guide them toward enlightenment, thereby enabling the most fruitful and holistic use of their students' intelligence and humanity. That enlightenment suggests the need for improving upon one's self-knowledge, but it also means helping them judge others fairly, using the full measure of their empathy and intelligence to do so. In an environment rich in differences of background, experiences, and perspectives, learning is turbocharged and intensified by the juxtaposition of those differences. Those open-minded enough to benefit fully from the power of this learning opportunity are bound for leadership in this time of confusion and division. The Harvard model intentionally and successfully provides to students a head start in understanding how to mediate difference in an ever more complex reality in which some exploit those differences for corrupt purposes. Today, irrational hatred of targeted groups is seemingly on the rise, stoked by opportunists seeking advantage for themselves and their profits. What stands between such malefactors and the destruction of our common purpose are people like you, who, having experienced learning through difference, courageously stand up for the rights of those who are targeted. Your Harvard education, if you were paying close attention here, should have encouraged you to commit willingly to play such a role. If you follow through on this commitment, in addition to everything else you accomplish in life, you'll be saving lives, stanching the flow of hatred and the dissolution of our national bond. You'll be serving the mighty cause of justice. If we are to thrive on this orb that we share, our schools and universities must contribute deliberately to increasing our understanding of the ways to interact meaningfully with others. Harvard is in some ways the most powerful university pulpit in the nation. It didn't achieve that status merely through its age and wealth. It attained that status primarily through the efforts of its faculty and graduates' scholarly and professional output. Through its gates have come generations of scholars with immense intelligence and passionate purpose, to whom fate bequeaths the laurels of success. But it is important that universities model in their own values and actions the high purpose that they hope to see in their students and scholars. In that vein, Harvard and other universities have a special responsibility as both a prod and steward of the national consciousness. It could sit on the hill and congratulate itself on its prowess, but it can also use its immense stature to address the widening gaps in how different groups experience freedom and justice. I spoke earlier about the truly heroic work of HBCUs and minority-serving institutions that keep our country open and advancing the cause of equality and access. Yet, many of them have been starved for much of their history by the legacy of underfunding and isolation from the mainstream of higher education. So I call on universities like Harvard to acknowledge the limitations imposed on these institutions over the past decades. While universities like Harvard had the wind at their back, flourishing from endowments, strong enrollments, constant curricular expansion, massive infrastructure improvements, and significant endowment growth, HBCUs often had gale force winds impeding their development. Our nation is finally coming to terms with the consequences of the underfunding of HBCUs, but we are far from where we need to be if we are to be assured continued progress in the fight for equal educational benefits. So I ask the university that did so much for me to add to its luster by embracing the opportunity to stand alongside these historic and other minority-serving institutions to build stronger partnerships, to advocate for greater funding, and to elevate the fight for parity and justice to the level it deserves. Let us not complain in 100 years that those historically excluded from access and opportunity continue to ask, how much longer will it take to gain the respect, inclusion, and support that their service to the nation deserves? Many minority-serving institutions accept students from impoverished, underserved communities where educational preparation often lacks the prerequisites needed for certain careers. Children in those communities may experience the same, or frankly, a worse fate than I and my peers did during the pre-civil rights era. Consigned to underfunded schools and alienating curricula, they must wonder, as I did, what will befall them in life. Public schools saved me, and they have the burden still of saving millions of children across this land. In so very many cases, these institutions are the only hope for many children and their families. Support for public education in this moment is as important as it was in the early days of the country when Horace Mann first called for universal education. For Mann, It was a matter of what our young country would need. It still is today, as man's emphasis on civic virtue continues to ring true. In such a moment, universities and all of you must play a leadership role in reversing the designation of the teaching profession as less intellectually worthy, less glamorous, and less important than the high-flying careers of financiers and technologists. Attention to and investment in K through 12 teacher preparation and curricular content remains one of the most important ways for universities and the average citizen to contribute to the civic good. None of us, none, is exempt from responsibility for the future we give our children. Harvard has its role, and so do all of you. I've come to ask you who graduate today what you are prepared to do to acknowledge and address the historic biases and inequities that so many continue to experience. Will your actions point us in a more uplifting direction? For just as we recount the moral bankruptcy of those who cruelly enslaved others, we also tell the story of those who were equally guilty because they refused to challenge the practice of slavery. In the future, the history of these times will reveal both what we do and what we failed to do to address the unjust treatment of marginalized groups. Among all that you will have learned at Harvard, I hope that the consciousness of your responsibility in the struggle for equality remains with you. While the legacy of enslavement, racism, discrimination, and exclusion still influences so much of contemporary attitudes, we must never conclude that it is too late to overcome such a legacy, for it is never too late to do justice. Today, I call on you to declare that you will not give sanction to discriminatory actions that hold some groups back to the advantage of others. I call on you to be a force for inclusion by not choosing enclaves of wealth, privilege, and tribalism, such that you abandon the lessons you learn from your Harvard experience of diversity. I call on you to do your part to ensure that generations to come will no longer be standing on the outside, fighting for fairness, respect, and inclusion. Today, after decades in the academy, my path has taken me back to a place where students are waging the same battles that were so hard fought when I was a teenager. Safe passage in the face of bigotry, the right to vote, equal access to educational and professional opportunities. Sandra Bland, a Prairie View alumna, was stopped for a minor traffic offense at the entrance to this campus. Jailed for this offense, she was found deceased in her cell 3 days later. Must every generation add more tragic evidence of the racial hatred that has troubled the world? Our work is not done as long as there are young people growing up with the thought that they matter less than others, as long as they have fewer and narrower educational opportunities, as long as they must fear for their safety every moment of every day of their lives, as long as their full participation in society is circumscribed by policies that willfully chip away or block their rights. Just as I ask Harvard to use its voice on behalf of minority institutions that have been unfairly treated across time, I ask you to add your voice to the cause of justice wherever you go. Help the children of need wherever they are, in underfunded public schools, in neighborhoods bereft of resources, in search of a way to belong. If they do not hear your voices advocating for them, and their worth, what must they conclude about their place in the world? If you take up the cause of these children, you are taking up the greatest cause, that of justice. Today, you earn your laurels as a scholar, but taking up the cause of justice, you will earn your laurels as a human being. Congratulations once again, and I wish you Godspeed. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth, for challenging us and for calling on all of us to take up the cause of justice, and for demonstrating the power of knowledge, discernment, and empathy throughout your extraordinary career. We're grateful for your words, your work, and for your example. And we extend to you and to the entire Prairie View community our warmest regards. Now to offer a benediction, two of the university's foremost voices on spiritual life. The Reverend Professor Stephanie Paulsell has served as interim Pusey minister since 2019, guiding members of our community with great skill and care through both a leadership transition and a global pandemic. In July, she will turn over the helm to the Reverend Professor Matt Potts, who will begin his tenure as Pusey minister in the Memorial Church and Plummer Professor of Christian Morals at the Harvard Divinity School. Stephanie, thank you for your spiritual guidance and all you've done to help us through this year, a year unlike any other. And Matt, welcome to your new pulpit. We are all privileged to be part of your new congregation.
Over the years, thousands upon thousands of graduates like you have stood on this patch of grass to take their degrees, receive their benedictions, and embrace their families and friends in celebration.
It's lonely here without you. Like so many of our spaces and places, like so many of our expectations and intentions, Harvard Yard on this commencement day has been emptied by the pandemic.
Whatever ground you're standing on today, we know there are people you wish were standing there with you. Friends, classmates, and housemates, teachers and mentors, relatives and well-wishers, and loved ones lost over the course of these difficult months.
Standing in this open space, aware of its long history and significance, it's hard not to hear those distant voices echoing through the trees. The voices of those far away who should be near, the voices of those scattered who should be gathered, the voices of those loved and lost who should be living. Standing here, it's hard not to hear the voice of everything we've lost resounding loudly in the thought of what might have been.
And yet, the future waits for you. It asks you to listen to the voice of the hard histories that echo here, and to answer with the lives you've yet to live. This patch of grass was never intended to be a destination. It's a starting place from which to begin the journey into the days and years ahead.
God bless you as this new journey begins, class of 2021. May you receive and recall the past with courage and patience. May you embrace and shape the future with daring and care. May your journey not take you back to the way things were, but forward into the way things could be.
May the echoes sounding here today rise up in you as a fresh vision tomorrow.
Amen.
Amen.
Fair Harvard, we join in thy jubilee throng, and with blessing surrender thee all.
by these festival rites from the age that is past to the age that is waiting before. O relic and tide of our ancestors' worth, that has long kept their memory warm. First flower of their wilderness, star of their night, come rising through change and through storm. Fair Harvard, we join in thy jubilee throng, and with blessings surrender thee all. By these festivals